My main thrust ever since the docuseries, and even before, frankly, is to shut down IBLP once and for all. As a side goal, I would really love to see Bill Gothard brought to justice somehow. I don't know how feasible that is. I'm not a lawyer. The lawsuits that were placed against him and everything that had to be pulled back is a real shame, because I really wish that he would show or face some accountability to the massive harm he's done on a personal level to so many people, as well as the abuse that he perpetuated through his efforts. But the larger institution, to me, is still priority one. It's well past time that that institution closes, and if they do, I will consider my goals met.
This is Prey versus Predator, the podcast. Welcome to our listening audience. We have an amazing guest returning, Chad Harris. This is part 2. If you have not listened to part 1, please go back and listen to part 1. And this is part 2. And we are so happy to have you again, Chad, with us. Introduce us to your audience very quickly. What can you say to remind them of who you are?
All right. Well, I am Chad Harris. I was on the Shiny Happy People Duggar Family Secrets docuseries. I grew up in IBLP's homeschooling. That's the Institute of Basic Life Principles. I grew up in their homeschooling branch, the Advanced Training Institute, ATI, from the time I was like 7 or 8 years old till the time I graduated. It was a very high controlling, very cultish existence that, taught me a lot of bad lessons that I internalized that quickly became physical maladies later, and I eventually found my way out of it. I was also raised in a preacher and missionaries home in the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church, and that just kind of compounded onto the already culty teaching. So it's been a lot trying to navigate out that, but I've been trying to build a life for myself that's free of all that, and eventually have found much happiness outside of all of the fundamentalism tropes and nonsense that went with it.
You can find Chad in the documentary Shiny Happy People, Duggar Family Secrets on Amazon. So please, I'd recommend that you go watch it for some background information. But I believe we're going to pick up where you left off in the last episode, in you questioning through your families. There was a break in one of the churches with the pastoral staff, and you asking your father why he hadn't stepped up. What happens from there for you?
Well, at that point, I started going to counseling and therapy just to try to figure out why I was feeling the way I was. I was having panic attacks. I was depressed. I was having difficulties with relationships. I grew up, of course, in purity culture and the whole courtship ideology, which was heavily taught in IBLP. That did not work for me at all. I'd had several terrible relationships with that. And I initially started just because of the panic attacks and to figure out what I was doing wrong in relationships, started therapy. And that eventually led to the realization that pretty much everything I've been taught in fundamentalism was wrong. And it was just, it did not suit me for and prepare me for the actual real world that I had to live in. So my counselor recommended that I try to find a way to make religion and spirituality work for myself. And she recommended that I start visiting other churches that were not part of the IFB. And she said, and if you have even like a little twinge in the back of your head saying, hey, this place is dangerous, leave. She said, it could very well be a nice church, but you need to start trusting yourself to know what places are safe for you and what are not. And so I started doing that. And honestly, and I started visiting more mainstream churches, which eventually led to a huge falling out with my dad because he got wind that I was doing so and had a huge confrontation with me at one point. And I just frankly told him, I said, I'm out. I said, I'm not doing fundamentalism anymore. I'm trying to figure all this out on my own. So I started visiting other mainstream churches, but I found that I had a lot of trouble fitting in with pretty much all of them. And anytime I would try to explain my story to my peers or to leaders of the churches that I visited, they would just give me this blank stare like, you were in a what? IBL what now?
Yeah.
And it was as if like they didn't really believe me. In fact, I've straight up told one pastor who I really appreciated. I said, "Hey, look, I love the way you've been going through the Bible. It's given me a huge perspective on things." I said, "I grew up basically in a fundamentalist cult, and what you've been doing has really helped me see a different side of things." And he wrote back telling me that what I experienced didn't really sound like a cult to him. It was really more of a high controlling environment that he said honestly works for some people better than others. And I said, "Well, okay, I'm out."
Yeah.
So I couldn't really find a good place to land as far as spirituality went. And that was when I started to really explore other religions and other uh, and other philosophies, and really start to dig into why I believe what I believe in the first place. I started out saying, "Well, I'm just going to go with, okay, I like Jesus, I like God. Let's see what happens from there." And then eventually I said, I might have to go a little bit deeper. And at that point, deconstruction wasn't a word. I just called it like breaking down everything and starting afresh. That's what I called it. And eventually I started like entertaining and questioning, like, okay, well, what if this is right? Or what is, like this particular religion or this philosophy have to say? And I really couldn't get comfortable with any of them. For some, it felt like I was treading on cultural ground that really wasn't mine to claim. And I was like, yeah, I just don't feel that. Eventually, I just got to the point where I was comfortable saying, well, at this point, if there is a deity out there that wants a personal relationship with me, I'm happy talking to that deity. I feel like that's something that can be done. And if it hasn't happened yet, maybe they're not all that interested. But personally, I'm just okay with leaving it unknown. And I'm just going to, continue going on as if, it's just up to me. Because at that point, I become more comfortable with my own judgment with myself. Not to say that I'm some expert or I've got my life figured out, because I clearly do not. But I still, I have more, or I have less of a need to have everything laid out for me now that I am out of a high controlling environment. And I just said, I would just like to live life on my own terms. So I identify now as atheist, and I still hold the possibility there could be something out there, but I'd have to see it for myself.
Mm-hmm. You sound like as a person, you sound very teachable too, and open to the gray or the unknown or the less certain and the less superior, and you've come from a program where it was very, certain. And this is what we believe. And this is how it works. And your nature, it sounds like, isn't necessarily that, which is lovely and open to the possibilities. So I want to honor that too, because I think that's what makes you a beautiful prey, #pray power, in the sense of being open, to what could happen and making sense or meaning from your experience and moving on. So thank you for telling your story and your journey, Mm-hmm. We just honor that story that you said. I want to go back a little bit with your IBLP experience. And what I'm fascinated by, and probably you can speak into it, because I didn't grow up there. Like we had said off camera, that a lot of the teachings of IBLP kind of got diluted into the fundamental evangelical framework, the umbrella of protection and all that. Very familiar with that. I heard that in my congregation. But what's specific for a guy or males and the grooming that goes on for males in this environment? Because we talk a lot about the female grooming and, you see the girls in the dresses and whatever. But I think there is grooming involved in the boys as well. Because when we were talking to Tia, I even said, like, out of all those children and all those, one of them has to be gay. Or what about the boys that don't want to be that type of patriarch?
Or predator.
They don't want to lay down the law and have, I speak for God and I speak for you. What happens to them in this environment? And I know you're very familiar with the training centers and the Joshua generation, like all of that. I am fascinated by. I know that's a massive question, but what can you start with?
Well, I want to start by saying that, you're right. There has been a lot of talk about women and those assigned female at birth, and folks who have had that experience. That's been the center of a lot of talk. And I am 100% for that, because the
Totally.
system was designed to hurt women primarily.
Mm-hmm.
And I never want to lose sight of that. And even though we as men were hurt too, I don't want to ever have this take precedence over that. And I don't want it to seem like that. So I just want to make that clear. But that being said,
Thank you
poisoned everything. Well, and as well it should be, because those who it was built to exploit and everything, that needs to be centered, I believe. But at the same time, Gothard poisoned everything. Everyone's experience who was involved in it was hurt in some way. And for men, and like you described, there were certain males, and I myself feel like I was one of them, who was always told that this was going to be my station, where I had to be this authority, where I had to be like the leader of my family and leading my family into this new era where, we would take America back for God and take the world for God and stuff. And I was not kidding. World domination was the goal. That was what they told us. They said, we are giving the world a new approach to life. And as we carry these things forward, you're going to see more and more people turning to Christ around the world. It didn't happen, of course, but they told me, and my dad would even sit me down and say, you're going to have to give an account, like I have to give an account to God one day, of all the things that your family does and how you trained them and how they turned out. So that's going to be your responsibility. And to me, that sounded like a lot of work. And frankly, I didn't want it. I was like, I like playing around on my Commodore computer. I don't feel the need to be this, controlling person and everything. I like to have fun. I like to play around. I would like to have a wife someday, or a girlfriend, or what have you. But it's, not for the reason that I want to have this thing to control. I just like people. I like having people around. I'm a people person, and I don't want to hurt people. But it was drilled into my head that this is what was going to be expected if I was going to be a successful man.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere was this more evident than the Alert Cadet program that I was a part of in Knoxville, Tennessee, at the IBLP conference in 1997. I was 12 years old. I had my 12th birthday while I was there. And I was told that entire week, they had us running around, and Alert essentially was the paramilitary wing of IBLP.
That's right. Yeah.
This is the junior version of that they only ran for about 3 days in the middle of the University of Tennessee campus at Knoxville. And they had us running around, doing push-ups, running obstacle courses, rappelling off of the World's Fair Tower in Knoxville, rappelling from the actual stadium we were holding the main conference in. They had us doing all these military style things while barking in our faces that we were going to be essentially the Christian Marines, that we were going to be the elites. And they were toughening us up physically for this spiritual warfare that we were going to be going up against. As a matter of fact, we used to sing a song. I still have the little manual they gave us.
I love this.
For Alert Cadet way back then.
Can you sing it?
Yeah, sing it, please.
Sing it.
Yes. Well, there was a song that they have us sing every morning. For our weapons are not carnal, nor are war with flesh and blood, but to pull down Satan's strongholds, we are mighty through our God, casting down imaginations that rise up against his hand, boldly bringing to subjection every thought to his command.
Wow.
Those last two lines.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a fun song to sing. It's just a ditty that we all want to join in.
No, we have
Mind
the tune.
control is awesome. Yes, right?
I know.
Casting down imaginations, bringing every thought to subjection. That was the theme for that week. We were taught we couldn't trust our own brains. We had to be physically and spiritually strong to keep Satan from literally taking over our minds. You're telling this to
12-year-olds.
10 to 18-year-olds.
Wow.
Seriously.
Do a lot of these boys become like those preppers, those like you see the Alex Jones InfoWars where they're like, buy the testosterone and, buy a vat of this for like, just in case they come and get your guns sort of? young people? Do they become, or are they attracted to that?
There was a certain kind of kid who liked alert uh, a lot, who later on in life, the ones I kept track of, they tended that way. They would either become these like little militia preppers, or they would join the military themselves and, kind of add that, but a paycheck. So it was, I saw this quite a bit. Now, people like myself, I hated the program.
Mhm.
I begged every day not to go to it. I told Dad, I was like, I will gladly sit and listen to the boring speakers rather than have to go out there and fail at every obstacle again, which I did.
Well, I was going to ask, like, did they teach you how to rappel, or did they just like, here you go?
Bless
have
their
fun?
hearts, they tried.
Yeah.
I literally got out there on the tower. I was all geared up. I was leaning back, about to go down the wall. The next thing I remember, everything started spinning and they started pulling me back up. They said, "You're not doing this. You fainted." I'm like, okay, cool.
Wow.
So I was like, I'm not doing that then. So I think I had to do push-ups afterwards instead. But
Wow.
yeah, this was not my jam. This was not what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to do something more fun, more technological or something. And my dad took me out. This is my 12th birthday when that happened. It was the middle day of the 3-day thing. He took me out to eat for my birthday. And the whole time he's telling me that the reason I couldn't do all the things that Alert Cadet wanted me to do was that he failed to teach me how to be a man.
Oh.
He said, I didn't push you hard enough, to be spiritually and physically strong. And you're going to need it because things are going to happen later. The government could come in and, make your entire family denounce Christ. What are you going to do then? So great way to spend my 12th birthday.
But just shows you the level of fear and toxicity. And that makes me think of this idea. Do Gabor Mate's work at all? He's well known sort of in therapeutic circles, but he has this idea of the authentic self versus the attachment self. And the attachment self is the self that will do anything to be liked, to walk, you'll walk on eggshells, you won't use your imagination when people can see it. You'll do what it takes to stay connected to your caregivers. But the cost of the attachment self is in this situation is going to be the authentic self. So your authentic self gets shoved down, and then you get depressed and anxious, and your body starts revolting, and starts kind of causing you all kinds of trouble because your body sort of knows that this is not true to you. And it's interesting to me because as you're talking, there's this powerful, authentic self that I'm hearing, despite all of this world that's trying to hold you up, like hold you down and create who you're supposed to be. There's this really powerful self, almost like in a gentle way, like not in a screw you, but almost like in a just let me go, like just let me fly under the radar, but it's still quite powerful. Did you feel that? Like, did you feel any sense of authentic self wanted to come out? Like, it sounds like you kept trying with your dad anyways.
Up until he died, I kept trying to connect to my dad on a level of authenticity. And I even wrote him a couple of letters where I told him what I wanted our expectations to be going forward, where we disagreed. And I'm like, that's even okay. Like, I still want to have a relationship with you, adult to adult. Here are some of the boundaries that I need, but I'm willing to, to do what it takes to maintain this relationship. The first letter he never responded to. I wrote him another one to kind of reemphasize and catch us up to where we were. And Mom intercepted that one and he never saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the reason I don't have a relationship with my mother to this day.
Mm-hmm.
But I tried, because what I was taught my entire life through things like that song, through all the routine ritual beatings and everything, was that my will, what they called that strong will that I had, my authentic self, was bad. And it needed to be broken, and it needed to be rebuilt how my parents and Gothard and everyone else wanted. And I spent a goodly portion of my life thinking that, but it was never broken. I talked about this with Lindsay when we watched Shiny Happy People. Episode 2 just about broke my brain because the part If anyone's seen it, if you haven't seen it, there is a part where a child is placed on stage and they demonstrate the kind of spankings that we would receive. And that affected both of us greatly. And we had to pause, and we were on different sides of the country, but we talked on the phone and about what we had just seen. And I told her, I said, the thing is, though, they failed. I said, despite everything they did, we never actually broke. We played the part. We were bent a little, but that authentic part of us never fully went away. And that is what we had to rebuild from the ground up and get to know and get to love. And I'll be honest, I still have a problem seeing myself as good. I have a problem seeing myself, my authentic self, as a good thing. I have a very complicated relationship with myself. If me and my authentic self had a Facebook status, it's complicated. But I'm learning every day that who I was as a child, who I wanted to be, who I authentically was, and who I am to this day was not something that needed to be fixed. It just needed to have guidance, and it needed to have love. It received neither, but there's still time.
Well, and I also want to honor the fact that, you were talking about relationships, and I kept thinking to myself, you were saying it was, it's difficult and navigating the courtship, and, and even what you're saying now, I just think, how could you not? And I don't mean that in like a pedantic way or whatever. It's like you were raised in a system that told you were bad, that what you liked wasn't good enough, that you needed to be a certain type of person or a predator in a lot of ways, relationally a predator, be domineering over your wife, all these things. So of course, it's going to be difficult when you get out of it and you're navigating a world that you were never raised in. And that is not, ideally, we would be raised in parents that loved us and, knew the best. But, so I say that to listeners, and I say that to you, like, we need to give ourselves space, and we do the best we can with what we know. And for heaven's sakes, from this angle, we see an amazing person that you've become, and that you are getting on a platform and opening your voice and going here. So I just want to, again, honor your place and where you've come from and where you are now, because when I see all this IBLP and the teachings and it's arranged for you to become a predator, and you did not. So that's huge. Like, that is huge. And I that's what I see, but.
Thanks. Like I said, when it became apparent that hurt came with fundamentalism and was not a bug, it was a feature, that was when I was out. I was like, I'm tired of seeing people hurt. They told us that we were supposed to have this, grand life that was going to be a shining example to others. But at the end, it just ended up making people like Bill Gothard rich off of our backs, and it ended up hurting so many people and creating more predators and more hurt. I mean, see also Josh Duggar. I am here to tell you that in my experience, he wasn't the only one.
Oh no.
No, I mean this is a system that is set up to on the backs of prey. So when prey are hurt, it's your fault. So when you have a gentle, loving kid who loves people, like you're describing yourself, but has this incredibly gifted imagination and sense of humor and all of the things that healthy, normal people want in a person. And then but the message to you is it's bad, it's wrong, it needs to be broken, it needs to be a shameful thing, it needs to be eradicated. You don't need to be that person. You need to be an asshole. Like,
yeah. Totally.
That's your job. And for the things that are most beautiful about our humanity to be seen as something that needs to be broken. That system is so twisted. I mean, in my mind, it's just evil.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, you saying that just then just reminded me, Alert, the program, the little military style program they wanted me to go through. ALERT was an acronym. It stood for Air Land Emergency Resource Team. But now that I think about it, maybe the A stood for asshole the whole time.
I mean, that's like we're going to use military might, political might. We're going to rule the world.
It's so gendered too. Like that's what's so funny too, because I'm sure there's little girls running around going, "I would like to run up there and jump off that."
Why can't I do ALERT?
Why can't I do it?
It sounds like Hitler Youth is what it sounds
it
like.
It does. But
I know for a fact that there were girls who wanted to do it. They got to do a program called Excel, which was like a finishing school type thing where they learned how to set tables and how to sew and stuff like that. So while we were out there like running around doing push-ups and everything, they were like in an air-conditioned building, like learning really boring manners and stuff.
Neither one of those sound very attractive, actually.
It wasn't.
So after you told your dad, "Hey, I'm out," did IBLP, like, was there any pushback from them? Did they try to get you back, or was it all whatever?
I mean, at that point, they didn't care because I graduated several years prior. At that point, I was in my mid-20s and I already had my own house, career, or apartment, really. Had my own place, had my own career going on and stuff. So I hadn't really been an active part of IBLP for some time. A lot of my friends, of course, like Lindsay, tried to further their adult life and everything through the training centers and such. I never did because my parents frankly couldn't afford to send me to go work for headquarters. A lot of parents actually did pay for the privilege of having their kids work for IBLP. And we just financially couldn't make that work. My older brother did do some time at the Indianapolis Training Center for a couple months, I believe. And when he came back, he just refused to talk about his experience. So I don't know what happened there. But if everybody else's testimony is anything to go by, nothing good.
Yeah. So interesting.
So for you now, you get to this point where you're deconstructing your faith. You leave this behind you. You start speaking on TikTok about some of your experiences. You get asked to be part of this documentary. It has that joined you into a wider conversation, like the conversation we're having today? Has it opened you to an audience of people that you hear from, positive, negative? What's that been like?
Oh, yeah. I mean, even before the docuseries, I had people reaching out who were learning about IBLP through the efforts of myself and, my fellow creators who were also doing things on their platforms. And, there was starting to be an interest. And then when the docuseries came out, I mean, my inbox just exploded with people saying, like we were talking about earlier, oh, wait, some of this was in what I grew up in. Yeah. Or I remember going to like some of these programs as a kid. I didn't realize it was IBLP, though. And, just seeing the effect that it had on so many people, even outside of fundamentalism, it's even been surprising to me. I knew that Bill Gothard tried to get his teachings out wherever he could. I didn't realize to what extent he was successful. And I mean, ultimately, IBLP and Bill Gothard have failed. Just no one's told them yet because they're still around. Mm-hmm. But yeah, even then, the amount of feedback I've been getting from people who now know what IBLP is, because before when I had to explain it to people, it sounded like I was connecting all these different lines on a pegboard and saying like, oh, this is connected to that. And this thing happened. This person. And the docuseries gave everybody a good starting point to where they actually made IBLP a household name. It was associated with the Duggars, who are already a household name, and people understood the danger of the cult more and its wider impact on society. And my main thrust ever since I started talking on social media has been IBLP is everyone's problem. If nothing else, the 4th episode showed just how widespread its influence has been and continues to be. Where I'm disappointed with the conversation right now is that IBLP still exists.
Yeah.
I have really been hoping that all this attention would cause them to scatter like cockroaches and disband the whole thing. They're slowly dying. Mm-hmm. They are selling off all their properties right now. They're trying very unsuccessfully to rebrand things. They're removing references to IBLP on their websites or hiding them in various places to where it's not front and center anymore. They're very clearly financially hurting, and good. But every day they exist, I take as a personal insult because they should not exist. Every child that they've hurt and continue to hurt is one child too many. And I want it to end now. So my main thrust ever since the docuseries, and even before, frankly, is to shut down IBLP once and for all. As a side goal, I would really love to see Bill Gothard brought to justice somehow. Yeah. I don't know how feasible that is. I'm not a lawyer. The lawsuits that were placed against him and everything that had to be pulled back. It's a real shame because I really wish that he would show or face some accountability to the massive harm he's done on a personal level to so many people, as well as the abuse that he perpetuated through his efforts. But the larger institution, to me, is still priority one. It's well past time that institution closes. And if they do, I will consider my goals met.
I did think it was interesting in the documentary where those women were bringing the lawsuits against him, and then it was taken away, and then he sued them back, countersued them, and yes. I was like, that is a predator using the legal system to re-victimize the victims. And I was so happy that it didn't work. But when you hear that, you're like, that's an example of where this happens systemically in our, legal systems and, things of justice, and even in our politics, where these predators re-victimize the people they perpetrated, they victimized. And it was quite disgusting. So I am with you. If there's a way that this legal system can be used against him, I don't know how he's covered his butt so far, but he has.
This reminds me like back in the day when there was the mobsters. The mobsters were doing things like having people killed, but they weren't
untouchables.
Yeah, they weren't doing it themselves. And because no law existed, they couldn't prosecute them. So they have to create laws. Like in the UK, there's a law now around coercive control, which is essentially all these proponents that you're like, all these pieces of this cult that you're talking about is all coercive control: fear, isolation, punishment. It's this kind of terror and this hierarchical structure.
Us against them.
So it's all there. But we don't have a coercive control law. We're there's movement. I think Australia does. Canada has some beginnings of that. The UK certainly has it on the books. But until that's there, this is going to, because even if they disappear, another one's going to pop up. There's probably, thousands in the US alone.
Well, emotional abuse is one of those things. There's no bruises per se, it's not like if someone, does something, physically assault somebody else, we can say, hey, we saw that, and we,
It's like that's the only thing we care about.
Yeah.
It's like if I don't leave a bruise, then somehow you're not damaged. Yeah. But then you've got young kids who are being beaten and who are being abused and who are being isolated and not educated, and there's nothing to protect them. So I think that is a great, anybody listening out there, I think that is a great thing in our legal system that we would certainly benefit. It would certainly start
to change,
giving the victims some kind of language and
recourse.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good word.
Chad, a question. Knowing what you know now, if you were going to give a piece of advice to your 12-year-old self, what would it be?
Well, first of all, I'd probably have to tell my 12-year-old self not to panic, because at the moment, I'm kind of the living embodiment of everything he thought would go wrong. I got the hair, I got the look, I've got the facial hair. I'm an atheist. I don't know what to tell you, and I'll probably have a beer later. But the thing is, I would probably have to calm him down and be like, no, seriously, it's fine. But I would also tell him, hey, the same thing I said on the docuseries, essentially. That little voice in the back of your head that says this is wrong, that you keep pushing back, that's right. That's not a demon, that's you. So I know it's rough right now, but in a few years, you're going to have a chance to let that voice take full charge and get out of here and do something well for yourself. So follow that, learn to trust yourself. You're not wrong. You're not evil. You're just a kid, and learn as much as you can. Maybe pick up a couple of coding languages that are not on the Commodore. And also maybe go to an actual university and not whatever mom and dad tell you they'll pay for.
Yeah.
It's worth it in the end. But yeah, that would be my thing. Just to tell myself to trust myself, because that was something I was actively encouraged not to do.
Well, I think there's a power in telling our stories. Like, PJ is, or Jill is very, that is what you talk about a lot, is how we need to tell our stories. And when you said that on the documentary, I have to admit that was one of the most moving things I heard, because I related to that. I went, oh yeah, that was a voice I was told not to listen to. That was a voice that was going to take me to hell, or is that, like whatever strange thing, and it's all the negative voices, which is the voice of my mother, the voice of, that person in the church. It's like, those must be more true than the voice that's kind of comforting and likes what I like. And it's so backwards and it's so confusing. But yeah, I just found it so powerful. And I think, and we've heard that in other people who've come from these systems. You're not the only one. We've talked to another guest, and that was one of the saving grace that he had, was to listen to his intuition. It took a while, but it's there.
Trust your gut.
Chad, thank you for being with us and dropping those seeds of wisdom and insight and hindsight. We are so thankful to have spent this time with you. We really, really appreciate you opening and being vulnerable with us here today and sharing your insights.
Doubly so. I've learned a lot from y'all, and I know you don't have this up in Canada, but I feel like I owe you a copay right now.
That's one of the beautiful things about being here. No copay.
Thank you. We really do appreciate it. And where can people find you?
You can find me mostly on TikTok at Archradish. I'm also on Instagram, Archradish85. And anywhere you see Archradish, that's ARCHRADISH, it's Chad Harris mixed up. That's about the best way to remember
so
it.
Good.
But yeah, if you see that.
Radish, like
radish. So we say it radish. Okay. I just heard reddish, and I was like, reddish? But okay, thank you. Radish, Archradish.
I'm also from the South, y'all. So
yeah,
yeah, and we want to say thank you for all the y'alls and for singing for us. That
was really nice.
That was beautiful.
I didn't expect you to say yes, and it was like amazing.
That's so great. Thank you. Thanks, Chad, so much.
Okay,
thank you.